Hello and welcome to Fantasy Fives, a podcast where I speak to one established guest all about their favourite five-a-side football team that they've come up with. This week, we're joined by Mark Nelson. Mark is sitting opposite me, so I'm going to give you his credentials and we'll get the camera on him and watch him be uncomfortable. Mark, you've won UK's Best Comic as voted by other comedians. You've got a special out now on BBC iPlayer. How does it feel to be doing a podcast in an attic?
It's good, man. I feel like Anne Frank. No, it's nice. That's a cool podcast studio.
I love it. I'm not even the podcast, just the studio. The studio's
yeah,
decent.
But I've never heard the podcast because it's brand new. So it's but it's a good idea.
Fair, right. Obviously, we're looking at football, fantasy five-a-side football team. How much does football mean to you?
A lot, actually. Well, specific types. I think. Well, do you know what? I was never really good at football.
Ever.
I played it, but I was never good. I would never ever have said I had a talent for football, but I enjoyed playing it. I played rugby a lot more.
Okay.
But in terms of watching it, particularly as you'll know as well, we've through Scotland is my main kind of interest in, because ever since I've been wee, I've dotted about the place and I've moved quite a lot with mum and dad's jobs. So I've never, and I don't really like folk. I actually hate people that have...
Full stop.
Yeah, just full stop. I don't like people that adopt a team that has got nothing to do with them at all. I literally...
So what do you mean, like, if people choose an English team, for example?
Yeah, I've got pals, Ryan Cullen, one of my best pals, is from Donegal and he's an Arsenal supporter. Yeah. And I'm like, you have no connection with this whatsoever. It's literally been whoever was really good at the time that you've just adopted. Yeah. So you can't be... there wasn't a fucking... Donegal there was never hatred towards Spurs fans in Donegal. Do you know what I mean? There was never fuck the Spurs written up on it. So I don't understand how you can have that kind of... So I've always felt, because I've never really had a connection with any team where I've lived. I mean, Queen of the South's probably the closest because Dumfries is where I spent the majority of my life. But Scotland has been the constant.
Okay, so when I set the rules up for this, so we're going to name your fantasy five-a-side team. You can have anyone from the world, anything of our. You've got to have a team name. You've got to have one player from the team you support, and the manager for the team needs to be someone in your phone book. So when you're talking about the team you support, you're going to give me in a minute. What team have you chosen?
I've chosen Scotland.
I thought you would have.
I can't because Queen's...
It's an absolute cop-out, Nelson.
Because Queen's I thought about, because I thought, Dobie's obviously the obvious choice, but then I was like, I can't because I've got someone else I'd prefer to play as a striker. Okay. So,
because this, I'll be perfectly honest, this is one of the first ones we're doing. Did you think about formation when you're picking the team? Okay. Yes. So what formation are you going for this team?
So I've gone for a 1-2-1.
Yeah, the classic. I think that is the good way to go. Yeah. Okay.
As a strong central defender, two wingers and an attacker.
Two wingers, not even centre mids?
No.
Oh, I'm intrigued by this. And then what team name did you go for?
I suppose you could call them two wingers, aye.
Okay, what team name did you go for?
Shaggers. Because I was trying to think about it and I was like, I can't call it anything else. So.
That's good. Okay, right, before we get into your team, you're picking a Scotland player. Mm-hmm. Let's just, for devil's advocate, say your favourite Scotland game ever. What are you picking?
My favourite... that's a really good question,
that you've been to?
That I've been to...
Because you were going to pick McFadden against France. Did you not win money in that or something like that?
No, that was one of my pals who won money in that. And it was his, so what was that, 2007? I think it was his 21st birthday that he won money on that. Do you know, bizarrely, right, I would say the most exciting game I've been to would be I would say the most recent. It's been a good 5 or 7 years now. The Israel one, where McTominay scored and 3-2.
That wasn't 7 years ago. That was 2021 or 2022.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Is it that close?
It was the first game at Hampden back for Scotland fans after COVID with a full capacity. So
wow.
The one where McTominay scored with his willy.
Yeah.
So
jeez,
that was that
3-2 one. Aye. And that was a genuinely exciting.
That was amazing.
Exciting game. I really loved that.
One of the first games I saw VAR used as well. Because I think they got a penalty to VAR or something like that.
Yes, that's very true.
I remember that game because I was sitting next to an 18-year-old who had a hip flask and I was drinking out of it, even though I was gigging. And I turned up to the gig and I was meant to be on the middle. And the person that runs the comedy club said, you get some food and you can go on an hour later, and tried to sober me up because I turned up so hammered.
Where were you?
the Glee.
At the Glee.
I turned up
in Glasgow. Because I was at the stand that night, right?
What happened to you?
I almost left early because I still had to take, because I went with Amy and the kids, and we still had to take, they were going to drop me off, right? So I was like this, because it was a 5 o'clock.
Yeah, it was a 5 o'clock
start.
Yeah.
So I was like, right, I'm kind of worried.
I still went to the pub after before I went.
I was fucking pissed, right? And I was the same when I turned up to the stand, where they didn't say anything, but you know those looks you get where they kind of go, and then like, you at the football today? Yes.
You're still face paint on.
yeah.
And because we'll chat quickly, because we were in Germany, you brought your son, and we were at a party the night before the tournament started. Has he looked back on it and realised how lucky he was to be at that?
I think he will. I think he has said how, there was certain people that he met that he was very...
To contextualise this party, it was like the Scottish Illuminati. Every famous Scottish person you can think of was there.
Yeah.
Your son was the only one under the age of, I would say, 20. And he was...
Probably, yeah.
What age was he at the time?
He'd be 8 at the time.
And it was free booze, whereas he adopted a free pretzel approach.
Free pretzel and free Cokes, which I didn't realise, right, until... So when we got the taxi back... Because there was remember all the people that was like a lot of folk dressed in like proper Bavarian costume.
Yeah.
So there was the guy with a full tweed checkered suit on, and he was loving my wee boy, and he was
questionable.
Yeah. But he had a hat on. He had a hat on like a feather in it, right? And he gave it to Seamus at one point, and he was like, "You have that," and he was proper chuffed with it. When we got the taxi back, so the taxi we got was about 2 a.m, I reckon, because Travis had just played.
Okay.
We were like, right, because the game was the next day. Like the opening game of the tournament was the next day. So it was like, right, we need to get back in. So we got a taxi outside, and we were about a mile away from the hotel, and he said, I feel like I'm going to be sick. And I was like, please, for the love of God, please just hold on. It's a mile, right? Please, for the love of Christ. And he went, no, I'm going to be sick. And that's I'm looking about, and we didn't have any bags with us. Yeah. And I was like, I can't. So we just took the hat off, and he spewed straight in the hat, right? And then just after he spewed in the hat, the taxi driver turned around and he was like, is your wee boy feeling sick? And I was like, he's been sick. And he went, you should have said, and he passed us this windsock, right? This huge plastic bag that was thin, like a massive condom, right? And he went, take that for the next journey. And I was like, fuck it. And like, if you'd have said beforehand,
did you think he was travel sick? Or do you think he was...
He thought it was travel sick.
Or do you think he was steaming?
But no, he didn't think... I'm assuming he didn't think he was steaming. But then I found out later on that not only was he constantly tanning the pretzels, he had been up to the bar himself, and the guy in the bar just kept giving him Cokes.
He's getting served.
So he was climbing up onto the stool, and the guy was like, another Coke? Yeah. And he was like, yeah. He's fucking like tanning these Cokes.
That night was phenomenal. I had one of the most embarrassing moments of my life where I was chatting to someone, a very famous Scottish footballer, and I was like, oh, I know that guy. I'm going to go speak to him. And then supposedly I walked like 10 paces, then did a 360 and came back. And I was like, I don't know him. That's David Coulthard. I recognise him from the telly. And I was doing stuff like that all the time.
It was genuinely mental. Like Sheamus was very excited to meet McCoist. Very excited to meet McCoist.
Alan McCoyst's a legend.
Very excited to meet McFadden, particularly because McFadden came over and said, how you doing, Mark? And so I was like, gee, I came. I was like, this is fucking unbelievable. Like, how the hell do you know who I am?
Yeah.
Salmond, obviously, like you got to meet your heroes. Yeah. And then...
She said it's Alex Salmond. We'll chuck in everyone's names. Do you want to pour one out?
And then it was very funny because I was taking pictures with him because I wasn't getting in any of the pictures, but I was like, because I got one with all of us.
Yeah, and McCoist.
Aye, yeah. And then so I was like, right, get in. So I got on one with Coulthard, Neil McCann, Stephen Thompson, Brian Gunn, and then so when we're going back, what my wife's family was looking through, they were looking through all the photos. And they were like, we noticed the only one that you popped into, Mark, and it's with Amy McDonald. It's just like me with my arm round all like that.
Smooth.
The only one I went in for, I was fucking, yeah.
Well, I'll text her husband and I'll let him know. That's good. Right, let's get down to your team. So goalie, I think, is the hardest one to pick.
Goalie was hard because I don't really have I don't really have any kind of like. I thought about Craig Gordon, largely because I've got an incredible memory of Craig Gordon where again it was like one of the when I said like the best Scotland game I've ever been to was probably that one against Israel. The most memorable was probably the Italy one, where for the Euros where we get beat when we're in that like group of death with Ukraine and
8 Euros that would have been.
Yeah, 2000. So this was 2000, like August 2007, and that would when we get largely cheated out of the whole game.
Pinucci.
Aye, and then there's this incredible image of Craig Gordon sitting in the goals after the final whistle's been blown, and he looks like a wee boy. Like he genuinely looks like he's about to cry, and he's a wee boy. So I always had that. So he's the only kind of keeper that I've ever had any kind of real love for. Or so what I've picked, because I texted you and said, do they need to be footballers?
They don't. So I've kind of hoped people would do this.
Right.
But who have you gone for in goals?
So I nearly went for, because I was like, right, okay, because I was, right. So I went down the film route, right? Have you ever, so I initially was going to have you ever seen the film Bed Knobs and Broomsticks?
When I was a kid, yeah.
Right, where there's a football match on the island of Naboo, right? Where it's animated, like it's fucking amazing special effects for the time, because it's like, I mean, it's decades before Roger Rabbit, so there's like humans interacting with animated characters and they play a match. And there was the keeper for the baddie side is this massive fucking gorilla, and he's class because he just hangs from the crossbar and just bats every shot away. So I nearly went for him.
That was
like,
a good one.
I don't know the guy's name, so I was like, it's disrespectful.
You can't go fat gorilla and goals, man.
So I have gone for another film, and I have gone for Sylvester Stallone. Right, but Sylvester Stallone's character in Escape to Victory.
You know, when you said film, I was thinking it's that or it's the monk from Mean Machine. That was the two ones I thought you were going to go.
I thought the Mean Machine for a few of the positions as well.
Okay, so you go Sylvester Stallone. What do you think he will bring to your team?
I think an enthusiasm, right? Because what I like about Sylvester Stallone in that, because that film's a fascinating film, and what I like about it is he's utter shite. He's never even played football beforehand, but he's so desperate to be part of this team because they're going to do the escape from the stadium.
Spoiler alert.
They escape. They escape, but they don't escape. Here's what happens, right? They don't escape in the way they should, which I think would massively piss off the French resistance, right? Because the French, so they send Stallone out as like a spy, and he meets up with the French resistance, and then these French guys dig through tunnels of shit in the Parisian sewers, because the game's taking place in Paris, and he's digging through shit, and eventually they find this tunnel, this drain that goes beneath the away dressing room's big bath, basically. So they're like, right, half time, get in there, we'll crack open the bath, you come down at the tunnel, we've got cars waiting, they'll drive you away, you're all escaped, right? And then what really pisses me off about it is if the Allied forces had gone in and they were doing really, really well, you could have maybe have a smidgen of, right, that's why they're going back out. They're still getting beaten. They're still getting beaten 4-1, right? They score one goal and then they're suddenly going, we can win this fucking thing. So the French resistance was supposed to be sitting there going, what the fuck it's weeks. We have literally risked our lives, dug through tunnels of shit to put this together. And because you've scored a goal, you want to put this at risk. But because Stallone's the only one that's like, what the fuck are you talking about? We need to get out of there. But even he becomes a good keeper by the end. And he saves a penalty. The reason I've picked him, right, he saves a penalty like I've never seen anyone save a penalty.
Okay, talk us through it. Oh, so by the way, what's his character name in it? Do you remember?
Oh, God. What is his character name?
Right, so he's just been called Sylvester Stallone from Escape to Victory. That's fine.
Terrible. It's not Hiltz. That's Steve McQueen in The Great Escape. Hutch.
Okay, so your goal is Hutch.
Hutch.
How does he save the penalty? What happened?
So there's been a couple of times, because Michael Caine's the captain, and again, all of this team are about 55 years old, right?
Yeah,
but they all talk about how they played back home. Like, Michael Caine's the West Ham captain back home.
Yeah, but it's different because it's walking football. So that's what they've not realised.
So they, he doesn't know how to deal with corners at the start. So he's like, what do I do for a corner?
You could play for Spurs then.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, hard luck you're playing Arsenal, so you're fucked.
Ryan Cullen shouting at you. That's what's happening.
So he's eventually he learns how to. So he basically comes out. He's like, just come out. We'll deal with it anyway. You just stay on your line and don't let anything past you, right? So there's a couple of times he comes out to punch it and he makes an arse of it and they scores. A couple of really dodgy decisions he makes as a keeper, but he learns and gets better as the game goes. And then the Nazis get a penalty towards the end. And the guy that takes it is like he's like the Nazis' main dude.
Yeah,
he looks a lot like Michael Ballack, actually.
Good casting.
Yeah, and
foreshadowing.
He takes a penalty, and it's not great, but it's not a shite penalty. It's a decent enough penalty, and Stallone catches it. And I think it's the only time I've ever seen a keeper catch a penalty.
Yeah, I'm trying to think back. Unless it's a really shit Panenka. That's the only time I've ever seen it.
Unless they're trying to take the piss and they hit it straight down the middle. But he dives to the side and catches it. And I don't think I've ever seen a keeper do that. Most of them will tip it round the side because they know that a corner's not going to come from it anyway. So they might as well make sure they get something on it and tip it round the side.
Do you know what?
He fully catches it.
What's so funny about this is we've got 4 more picks to go, but I can tell this is the one you're most passionate about.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, the rest of them I don't give a shit.
Right, so you've got Hutch, aka Sylvester Stallone, for the greatest game of goals. Who's your one defender? Who are you going?
Souness.
Okay, so is this your Scotland pick?
No.
Okay, so it could have been, but it's not.
Yeah,
okay,
that's my so
again, why Graham Souness?
Again, I thought about various defenders. I thought about Yap Stam for some reason, but the reason I picked Souness is because in a fives game, in one defender role, you need someone that's not only hard as fuck, but mental. Yeah. And I can't think of anyone harder or more mental than Graham Souness.
How do you think him and Sylvester Stallone would get on?
Not well at all. And that's what I like. Like, I think they would properly needle each other. And it needs that passion behind it. But he's Souness. I mean, the thing is that Souness has kind of matured into like this, because he's a pundit now. And he is like most kind of these kind of pundits, he will say, that kind of Radio 5 Live pundit, he's not quite fully that, where he'll only say things like a clickbait.
He's not sound bites.
No, he's not. But he is kind of. He will come out with stuff every now and again.
Yeah, it feels like he's quite close to blaming football being bad on the woke generation.
Yes.
It feels like he's close to that, but he's not quite there yet.
He's not full Roy Keane yet.
Yeah.
But he's going like...
Yeah. Did you ever see him play?
Souness, yes, I saw Souness play for Rangers when my dad was a Rangers fan. And he used to take us to quite a few games.
Was this player manager time?
Yes, it was. It was.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you think he'd be a leader in the park then, Souness?
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, like, there's a thing about Souness where there's like, have you ever seen those clips of tackles that wouldn't be allowed now?
Yeah. Oh, I love them.
And Souness has got about 4 of them in a
row.
3-minute clip. You know, like. This guy got away with literal murder every week. And then there's an amazing thing when was it Galatasaray manager?
I think the way it goes is he was Galatasaray manager against Fenerbahce.
And he planted the flag in the middle of the pitch.
If you see your team, the Shaggers, what's your flag?
Oh, I didn't even think of it that. Right, I'll come back to that.
Just 2 people at it?
Or like...
Is that the flag? Imagine Souness planting it in the middle of Drumchapel, 5-a-sides, planting the flag in the middle.
Hey, but that's a great clip.
It'd be amazing if he goes to put it in the centre circle and it just falls through and Sylvester Stallone dives down into the sewers.
This pitch just gives way. But I mean, like, because I know, obviously, living in Glasgow, as we do, the Old Firm is the best. I mean, it is the biggest and the best derby in the world, regardless of what anyone says.
As a neutral.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah. But that Turkish one it's close.
Yeah.
Like,
I would say there's more, it feels like there's more GBH in that one.
Yes.
Definitely feels that way.
Yeah.
I remember being in Turkey and a guy walked by a restaurant and he was wearing a Fenerbahce top and one of the restaurant owners was wearing Galatasaray top. And as the guy, clearly a tourist, walked by, he spat on the floor in front of him, the Galatasaray fan. Like,
amazing.
Just like so much disrespect. You wouldn't get that here, I don't think, would you?
I don't think you'd get that.
Not as much spitting on the floor
here. I feel the Old Firm now has become an online battle. as opposed to
Or
actual physical.
Well, unless you're in Argyle Street at Christmas.
Yes, yeah. Unless you got a Santa hat on and you're in a running battle. Aye.
Yeah, if you're listening and you're not Scottish, look that up and then you can see
Terrifying people that are up for their
outside
Christmas
what
shopping.
used to be a Debenhams, like just weird. Okay,
Just very quickly, there's another reason I thought about Souness as well was we know that the comedian Paul Snedden, who plays Vladimir McTavish, and he also does Bob Doolally, who is...
I remember watching that on telly when I was a kid.
Yes, so the character is he's basically an alcoholic manager, and there used to be, he used to do one, I think he still does one show every year as Bob at the Fringe, and I used to go every year and go and see it, and it'd be like, because I drive back and forward, it'd be the one night where I'd get pissed and watch it, right? Yeah. And I remember almost falling off my seat laughing because he did this. So he was doing questions that the audiences had asked him. So he's like, who's the hardest player you've ever played with, Bob? And he's like, oh, well, I'd have to say Souness. Oh, Souness. And he was like, tell you how hard he was. He had a triple bypass surgery. There was fuck all wrong with the cunt. I was howling laughing.
I can imagine Paul being very happy with that as well.
Oh, I was howling laughing.
Great. Right, so you've got Sylvester Stallone, Souness. Is it a team full of Essies?
No.
Okay.
I just realised that. No, it's
midfielders.
Not.
You said you're going 2 wingers and a centre mid. Okay.
Yeah.
Winger number 1, who we got?
So this is my Scotland pick, James McFadden.
Okay.
Largely because he
knows who you are.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and he's the most exciting player that I think, in terms of growing up, I think he was. He was a player at Scotland at the time, because even though Dan Fletcher came out around at the same time. I mean, he pretty much made their debuts.
Yeah, I think Fletcher might have been a year after, maybe not much.
And Fletcher obviously went on to have a far, far more successful career. But Faddy was just an exciting player that Scotland hadn't had for a long time. I mean,
he was our cheeky boy.
Yeah, I can't think of anyone that exciting from when I started watching Scotland up until McFadden that I could go...
Well, let me ask you now, how do you feel about Ben Doak then? Is it the same
This
feeling?
is the same kind of thing. Yeah, exactly. Those kind of players that they always go... You know, when people always talk about the reason that Scotland have always had a decent team and they've always had a strong base, but they lack that person that could win a game on their own.
Yeah.
That kind of Gareth Bale.
Yeah. It's the one that always gets landed. Yeah.
And McFadden felt like that, especially during that Euros campaign, because there was some games, I mean, I remember us hammering Ukraine where Lee McCullough scored an absolute belter for outside the box. But there was some games like the Lithuania game that McFadden generally did win on his own that day, because we were largely dog shit. But
what does it feel like for you now? Because obviously your stand-up's doing really well, and you're at the point now where you've got a telly show, you got a radio show. So when players that you've grown up idolising know who you are, and you were saying your wee boy found it cool, how did you find it?
It's mental. It's genuine, because I find it bizarre. I've never been one of those people, and I never will be one of those people that just expects, oh, of course, why wouldn't he know who I am? It genuinely feels, it's I think Scottish people are more like this as well. I think when you see some of the London wanks, they would obviously expect it, but...
Name names?
Okay, you know. But I think Scottish people, because you're growing up, you're not told to, but you're very much expected to kind of downplay stuff you're good at. There's not, that kind of, who the fuck do you think? You're don't get above your station, that kind of way. So I think when anything big does happen to you, you do also have a sense of, depending on how you've grown up, you do also have a sense of this might get taken away at any point.
That to feel like you're living a lie.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question then, Mark? Because we've known each other, I reckon, 15, 16 years. For full context, I don't know when this is going to come out, but we're recording this towards the start of the year. When you're talking about people who've gone on and gone to big success and stuff like that, as someone who, similar to me, grew up watching wrestling, how did you feel last week when one of our mutual friends, Richard Gadd, was on Raw?
It was genuinely amazing. That's the biggest achievement. And I reckon Gadd would also say that.
Yeah.
I think Gadd would have been more excited about going to and the fact that it wasn't just a Raw.
It was WWE Raw on Netflix for the first time ever.
Raw on Netflix. I think he would have been more excited going to that than he would have going to the Golden Globes the night before. I genuinely think that.
It was one of those moments I'm like, fuck, he's done well now. Not all the billboards, not all the awards and all that. I was like,
I mean,
he was after Macaulay Culkin in the video.
If he'd been there, it would have been big enough. But the fact that as they were going round the crowd, they went, oh, we're joined by Richard Gadd from Baby Reindeer.
I feel like the only way I would get that is if Thistle are in the Challenge Cup final and it's on BBC Alapa. Do you know that way? They'll go, here's Dotta Man and here's Ray Bradshaw. That's the only way I would get it.
Yeah.
I can't. Where do you think you would get it?
I got at the Euros during the summer. A load of people sent me after the Switzerland game, like, we've just seen you and your wee boy on telly. And it wasn't. It was just another fat bastard with blonde hair. So it's like, I wasn't even at the Switzerland game.
And what did you look like?
Wasn't even at the Switzerland game.
I was going to say, you're home. No. That is phenomenal. Right, James McFadden on one wing. Who's on the other wing?
Ryan Giggs.
Right.
Cancelled
on episode 1.
For 2 reasons.
Right, okay.
Right. First reason is he's a class player. Genuinely absolute class. Talk about people that could win a game on their own. The most talented, because I grew up watching that when the Premiership first started on Sky.
92.
Yeah, he was one of the standouts of that generation of players. Because you always had, because Liverpool always had, what were the Spice Boys?
Yeah,
they were that whole generation of good-looking young guys who were class at football.
And Jason McAteer.
And Jason McAteer.
Is the other one.
Yeah. But Giggs was always one of those people that he just... And, I mean, some of the goals you watch at Giggs, the goal where he picks it up just behind the halfway line and dribbles around about 6 people and then score. And it's not even like he's done it all with the dribbling. It's still a class finish. And then he tears his shirt off. And this was still when he didn't get booked for taking your shirt off. And he's a fucking incredibly hairy, much hairier than you imagine. Yeah. Like, proper fucking Richard Keys gorilla type chest on him.
Do you wish now you'd picked the gorilla and goals as well for Ben?
But a very hairy
grooming.
Yeah, because Souness is very hairy. I don't know how hairy McFadden is. But
imagine that after the Fives games, just the dressing room's flooded. Just the showers, they're all molting.
So yeah, just purely because of the creativity and that goal. Because that was around about a great time when I always seem to remember those Premiership years. See those kind of weeks leading up to Christmas and weeks between Christmas and New Year. Those games used to be incredible.
7-2
yeah, all that kind of when Keegan was manager in Newcastle. Just insane games that were just absolute class.
But that was also a time as well, and I think that might be one of the reasons why it sticks in your memory when Champions League games were on STV.
Yes.
And you could watch Tino Asprilla score a hat-trick.
Absolutely.
You could watch Giggs. And the Man U Juve games in 98, 99 were like 3-2 all the time.
Unbelievable. So yeah, that's the first reason I've picked Ryan Giggs. The second reason is the Christmas night out, he's not at home shagging your wife.
How?
You need to know where Ryan Giggs all the time. You need to know he's present because you don't know what the dirty bastard will be getting up to elsewhere.
So you've just essentially taken him to keep him out of mischief.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is he playing? Oh, by the way, Ryan Giggs playing for a team called Shaggers. Is this a community service order?
I didn't think about that, but it can be.
Okay.
Yeah. Consider I didn't even delve into his criminal allegations and past.
To be honest, I think we're going to cut this bit out, so it doesn't really matter.
But yeah, largely to keep an eye on the
phenomenal.
The man.
Okay, so you've got your striker left. There's a lot of hairy men in this team.
Mm-hmm.
Does a striker follow that?
No,
who you
I don't think so. Dennis Bergkamp.
No, svelte.
Aye. He would be the kind of guy that'd use that hair removal cream.
What, Veet?
Veet, yeah.
Is he on the Veet?
I was almost going to call it Vicks. You know that Vicks?
Just getting really confused.
Every time you've had a cold, you emerge from the house like a fucking
dolphin.
Bald cat. I've been on that Vicks.
It's classic Bergkamp, isn't it? The one that doesn't fly stinks.
I can breathe again, but you couldn't catch me if I was running away from you.
So why did you pick Dennis Bergkamp then?
I think Dennis Bergkamp is the best striker to have ever played in the Premiership.
Oh, that's Henry, Ronaldo.
Better. Well, I've never classed Ronaldo as a striker.
Okay, what have you classed him as?
Just a creative midfielder. Same as I've never classed Messi as a striker either. They're not out and out strikers.
Play out and wide.
Yeah.
Ronaldo played through the middle for a bit, but not a lot of the time. Okay.
You know, but I think in terms of out and out striker, I think Dennis Bergkamp is the best.
Who's your number two?
Number two might be Henry.
Okay.
I mean, as much of it pains, Harry Kane's close.
I honestly thought you were going to go on rogue there and be like Jan Koller or something like that.
But then you can't. I mean, Shearer. You can't forget how good Shearer was.
Yeah.
And Andy Cole as well.
He's on the
phenomenal.
There's a 99 documentary about Man U and Andy Cole's features heavily, and you forget about his goal scoring record.
Yeah.
Incredible. So why Bergkamp? Why is he number one?
I think, like I say, I think the best positional striker that I've seen in the Premiership, because I base most of it in the Premiership because that's what you see. I think in terms of someone who could create their own goals and someone who was always in the right place at the right time. Very much, McCoist had that.
Yeah.
McCoist wasn't a creative player, but McCoist had a spatial awareness and an awareness of the game where people always almost put it down to luck, like he always seems to be in the right place at the right time. But that's not luck. That's knowing.
It's timing.
That's knowing where to go. And like tap-ins aren't tap-ins because you just happen to be there. You've created the tap-in.
Unless it happens to Erling Haaland, because I hate him.
Yes,
so like, I don't know
Yeah.
why I've got a
I
weird
can't
hatred
stand-
of
yeah,
him.
yeah.
So, okay, so Bergkamp in there. Do you think Bergkamp will track back?
No, I wouldn't want him to either.
But you're leaving him poaching up
Yeah,
top?
yeah. He also scored what I think is the best goal in the Premiership.
The flick?
Yeah.
Against Newcastle, was it?
Was it against Newcastle?
I think it was Newcastle. I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, Dabazas maybe is lying on the deck and then he just slides in.
Stunning. Absolutely stunning.
Do you remember the best goal you've ever scored? That's a no then.
No, I don't think. I remember scoring a long range one from outside basically in the other half when I was at uni once. Not this was fives.
Still.
Aye. I think that's the only one of note that I could ever. Like I'd certainly never an overhead or.
No, I hit the bar from an overhead kick once in an 11s game, and I really wanted to get subbed off because I was like, I've peaked.
See, I don't know why. I don't know if I'd ever attempt an overhead.
Do you want to know why I'd been? This is the most wanky sentence ever. I'd been playing a lot of beach football in Australia with former Motherwell striker Stephen McGarry. And I've been doing overhead kicks for like every week.
Aye.
And then I came
suppose if you've practiced the technique.
Yeah. It was weird doing it in like Cottesloe Beach in Perth compared to where I actually tried it in Muir End in the Eastern Bartonshire.
Yeah.
East Renfrewshire.
Were you out gigging there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I met with a couple of footballers to interview and then just started playing beach football with them.
Nice.
It was Brazilian guys. I was the only one that kept my top on. Like, because it was so sunny. I was like, I'm going to die here. It was great. It was good.
I broke my toe playing beach football once.
How?
Sand? Me and I mean, it wasn't a game. Like me and my wee brother and were playing. My dad was in goals when we were on holiday once, and we were like trying to do free kicks, and it was sat in the sand, and I went to and I hammered it, and I didn't know there was a rock just under, so I went to get some fucking height on it. So I went under the sand straight into this rock.
What beach are we talking? Where are we?
This was in Lanzarote.
I thought you were going to say Llandudno. So you should have foreseen that. Oh, that's a bad one. Right, and the final question I've got for you, Mark, about your team is I want a manager from someone. It has to be someone in your phone book. We want a personal touch to this. Now, looking at your team, I think you're going to need someone who can rein them in, or do you think they can be a soft touch because Souness will be doing a lot of the leading? Who's your manager?
This was tough, right? Because... And it's like I imagine when you do this with footballers, this podcast, it'll be a lot easier because I'll have people in touch. I mean, you do this with a lot more famous people.
Yeah.
Like if Gad ever comes on this, he can say The Rock, right?
Who's yours?
I actually looked through my phone book and I was like, right, I don't have that many footballers or famous people. I almost, because I bizarrely have Craig Levine's number now.
That would have been great.
And I thought about Levine. But then I can't have I can't have a 1-3 formation. So I've went for a friend of mine and a friend of yours as well, Kai Humphries.
Okay.
The comedian Kai
Yes.
Humphries.
Very good. Geordie comedian.
Yes.
Why Kai?
Kai I've gone for because I think, for two reasons, I think there's a lot of five-a-side that needs to be about camaraderie, right, with pals and stuff like that. You need someone, again, I think a five-a-side night out is important in terms of team morale.
Or post-game even.
Or
Straight into the
post-game,
pub,
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think Kai is perfect for that kind of thing, right? He very organised. He's got his shit together, Kai, regardless of how he looks. He looks like, he's very, very competent in all the things that he does. So he would be good on that. He's also the luckiest person I have ever met in my life. There is literally nothing that doesn't land for Kai.
You said this to me before as a kind of rant. Well, can you give me an example?
So there's been a couple of things where there's been a couple of times he's mislaid various things, right? So he's lost his passport or something. There was one time he lost his passport. I think they were away on tour with him and Sloss, and he lost his passport, and there was largely no chance of. So say I can't remember the countries, but say they'd been gigging in Prague, and the next night they were in Amsterdam. He'd lost his passport in Prague, so the logistical nightmare would be to then go. So he's only. I think because it couldn't, because they'd driven to the next country, but they had to get to another country. So say
it's Austria and Slovakia.
Yeah. So something like that. And then they've got to get somewhere else. He's then going, right, I've lost a passport. To get onto the next leg, I'm going to need to go to the embassy. I'm going to need to get all this sorted out. It's going to cost me a fortune. On the day, he'd put this up on Instagram. On the day, a fucking pal of his, a Geordie, just so happened to be on a stag do in Prague, was then flying to the destination that they were in, so could pick up his passport, right? So he was like, I don't actually know where it is. It might be in that toilet. Went in, it was in the fucking toilet, picked it up, flew there, met Kai gets passport back. It's mental.
What would happen to you in that situation?
What would happen to me would be, I'd get to Amsterdam, realise not only had I left my passport, but I'd also left my son. That's what would happen to me.
You'd home alone it.
Yeah, and then someone would say I can pick him up, and that person would turn out to be a paedophile. That's what would happen to me.
That's me laughing. Do you want another Coke, Queen? Right, so let me just read.
And the last reason for Kai is Kai has a very good way of convincing you that you can carry on and do stuff when you don't think you can.
Okay.
Right? The amount of times I've been at a music festival with Kai where it's been about 6 a.m, and I'm genuinely not only considering going to bed, considering going home, and Kai has then convinced you that you still have another couple of beers in you, and it's worked. Because then come 10 o'clock, you've just ridden through it, and that's you set up for the day. So many times.
He's going to take them out. Okay, let me recap your team. I should have asked you a question earlier, Mark Nelson. Shaggers. Is it Shaggers FC, AFC, United?
Harriers. Shaggers, Harriers.
Sounds nice. So let me recap the Shaggers, Harriers team. You're going formation 1-2-1. Your goalie is Hutch, aka Sly Stallone, in the Escape to Victory.
Yep.
Your defender is Graham Souness.
Yep.
Your wingers are James McFadden and Ryan Giggs, and your striker is Dennis Bergkamp. Your manager is Kai Humphries. How do you think Kai will manage this team?
Pretty well, because I think Kai is one of those people that is much of a laugh that he'll let stuff go. But Kai's also incredibly hard. So I reckon even at his peak, Kai could square up to Souness quite easily.
Ooh, who's breaking the fight up?
No, that's a good point. Probably Stallone.
Stallone's
He's the only guy that's got the. Because you can't imagine Bergkamp ever breaking a fight up.
No. He's still trying to work out a route to get to Paris.
Giggs is watching porn in the toilet. So.
Anyway, Mark, that's your team. What's coming up for you? What you got coming up? Where can people find you?
They could. It's at Mark Nelson Comic on everything. It's exactly the same on all of the social medias. I'm on Blue Sky.
You posted anything yet?
I have, but it's boring.
Is it?
It's really dull. It's like I remember this happened before when Twitter went all mental and they introduced some other pish.
Yep.
And I didn't bother that time. I'm glad I didn't bother.
Yeah.
Because Blue Sky's just boring.
And then what's happening in Glasgow Comedy Festival? Are you touring? What's happening?
Glasgow Comedy Festival, I am doing 2 work in progress shows at Blackfriars.
Great.
On a date in March. I think it's the 18th.
It's going well then, eh?
Friday. It's the middle Friday.
Look at you trying to convince yourself.
Yeah,
This is sweet.
I've no idea when the
And then what
fuck it
about tour? What's happening with
is.
that?
The tour is starting again, and the next tour is starting in October. And it will be a lot of the Scottish dates. Actually, no, not a lot. Some of the Scottish dates. And then next March, I'll be at the Pavilion.
Great.
Which is the last date of the tour.
What are you calling the tour?
It's called Liquid Gold.
Is that Poppers?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's Poppers.
Perfect place to leave it. Mark Nelson, thank you for joining us on Fantasy Fives.
Thanks very much, man.